Welcome to Get Serious. So, anybody who might be tuning in daily might have noted that we did not release a podcast yesterday. Yes, that was intentional there. So, I think you heard in the previous podcast, probably the biggest takeaway from the unconference was just the necessity to double down and focus on what is actually working for the company. And from a content creation standpoint, while I was away at the conference, our ops manager was diving into a lot of statistics and figuring out, okay, what is performing the best from, Reels perspective, podcasts, newsletter, SEO, etc. Because we've produced so much over the past several months that now we can start putting together the data. Okay, what is our best performing content and where should we double down even further? And I'm mentioning that. And then additionally, while I was at the conference too, not necessarily like asking people for direct feedback, but a number of you attending were mentioning to me that, hey, enjoy reading the newsletter or listen to the pod or, see the shorts on Facebook or Instagram. And out of all of those, while again, I appreciate all the, thanks for producing the content. Glad to, even provide a little bit of value to any of you at all. Probably the most noteworthy one, or that's getting the most attention, is the newsletter, and which is certainly good to note. I probably that takes the most effort to produce, and in terms of open rates and click-through rates, I mean, it's usually between like a 55-65% open rate and upwards of 10, sometimes 15% unique click-throughs. So I know it's above industry average there for the folks that do read it, whereas the podcasts and the reels, like those have been daily for almost 8 months now. And even though they're short, just in, today's kind of general attention, or what am I trying to say? Just the, kind of overload of content that everybody has access to. It's easy to kind of fall by the wayside and not necessarily have the opportunity to drive as many results for increased listenership. And so we have noted that listens and streams have been, relatively stable, but not necessarily growing, for the past few months of doing the podcast at least. And so, what doesn't get measured doesn't get managed, of course, right? So, that's why we did a full review of all the various stats and seeing, okay, what, pod headlines and topics were performing better versus not. And it was pretty interesting looking at this. So, I'm pulling this up now as I'm going through this. I mean, not surprising. The episode number 1 was actually the top performer. A lot of folks, if they're checking something out, not always, but might start with the first episode. And so I'm not too surprised, even though I was probably the most raw in terms of figuring out my podcast voice. Still, it's probably going to take hundreds of more of these to like really become good at it. But it's constant practice. And then other ones that were higher ranked was like, land market warning, why I'm fire selling properties now. Like that's like a pretty aggressive, maybe controversial title. Buying time, the new #1 strategy for land investors. How I'm balancing land deals, auctions, and deep work struggles. Or premium property equals different rules. Negotiation lessons from a $750K deal, or infill lots too risky, or when I mentioned that land pricer beta was coming out. So things that seem to be tied a bit more to, it's kind of hard to figure out which one of these stands out the most. It's probably the ones that are a little bit more controversial or like, excited. Like I'm glad that land pricer one got a lot of attention, even though it didn't, the beta kind of had we had to do a lot more production on it, and still, because the initial beta did not go well, it was needed a lot more refinement, as you've heard me talk about recently. But yeah, some of these other ones talking maybe more, again, more counterintuitively about various risks within the market, or again, trying to figure out, what the number one strategy is for land investors. I can see why that would work. And then on our reels, the number one biggest performer is, how we made 200K profit from a land deal in 57 days. So that got almost 500 views on Facebook and almost 400 on Instagram, which is tremendous, right? Like, but I would love to be having headlines like that every day, because that would serve my content clearly, because people just want to know how to make money quickly. Like that type of stuff is always going to perform well, because your results are your results. But earning that much reliably and having deals go that well is just not that common. So we're not going to just create clickbaity headlines that are misleading for the sake of views there too. But yeah, it's good to note, like, earning a bunch of money in a shorter period of time is going to get attention. Great. I'm not surprised there, but that's what the data shows. And then, okay, what's one thing that makes a piece of land sell faster? Yeah, like great kind of, key advice on what people are looking for. What my high level contacts are saying about this market, how long would you hold land before adjusting the price, stopping typing emails and reviews, so using whisper flow, or raising our minimum deal size to 50K. That one was more recent too. Trusting broker projections or building your own comp model, and even the daily content, what format works every single day indefinitely. So, even though I'm backing off the podcast now to just do 3 times per week, we're still going to be posting the reels daily and just chopping up the pods more, because, the reels have been more steadily increasing in consistent views. So we want to maintain that momentum for the short form content, or even shorter form, even though podcasts are short form too. So like noting all of this, it's just like, okay, let's double down on where we can add the most value. We're continuing to push content out, all the time here, but can we enhance our results further by, again, kind of consolidating our efforts and ensuring that everything is as high value as possible? So the newsletter, like solid, that has been, really solid from the start, and probably our best performer at the moment here. And on the podcast side, like I could keep doing it every day, but clearly it seems to be a bit too much at the moment for the audience here. And so if I even allow myself a bit more time to, chop down to 3 times per week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, that will allow me to still maintain, the same, rough length of the podcast, but make sure that I'm delivering even more targeted content based on, some of the results that we've gotten over the past 8 months in terms of what type of content performs the best. And honestly, like looking at this, it seems that the more general concepts are actually reaching a better audience. It's like, the number one strategy for land investors, like sometimes I think the more granular stuff that less people are talking about more routinely might have been the better options, or clearly like the mindset ones that I do, which I really, really enjoy, aren't necessarily the best performers there. But you got to meet your audience where they're at. It's not all about me producing this stuff. So I think doubling down on core strategies and tactics that are going to help a wider array of land investors, and that probably more people are thinking about on a routine basis, is going to be more interesting to most of you tuning in here. And if you have been tuning in to all the podcasts from the start, or even most of them, like, can't thank you enough for that. Again, just nature of business. You got to assess the data, reflect on it, and take a course of action according to what's being presented in front of you. And so this is just a deeper data analysis, figuring out, all right, what do we need to do? And this is, I was listening to Sharon Srivatsa. I reference him all the time now on content production. He's like, that's just the thing. Like, you don't need more content. You just need to double down on the content that is working for you. And to just, spread it out more routinely, and chop up the pieces that do work the best and distribute more widely. That's what I would like to do more going forward here. It's an evolving process. I'm going to be producing content probably for the rest of my life here. I'll keep looking at the data and adjusting accordingly. And if you ever have any other feedback from me, you can always directly send in your thoughts, and looking forward to delivering more here. So hope you enjoyed this one and seeing a little bit more how the sausage is made, and what stood out from our own internal data and how we're making decisions. It doesn't come lightly here. We're just trying to grow as a company. With all of that in mind, seriousland.capital for any of your funding needs, Land Daily Diligence Facebook group for zero cost review of your land deals, and landpricer.ai for the most reliable land funding tool or land pricing tool on the market. I don't know how many times I've made that mistake. With that, subscribe and share, everybody. Take care. Bye.